Welcome back to the Crisis Report. It was December 23rd, 2025. It is now December 24th, 2025. Merry Christmas. Let's get started. This one is called Redacted, ? Well, the reason why is because tonight's headlines are painting a picture of a world that is under pressure. There's politics, there's a war on censorship and culture, and all kinds of collapsing trusts that are happening. Trump has made a dramatic return to the spotlight, of course, as he's now been emceeing the Kennedy Center honors, and he came out to the Rocky soundtrack, even as his administration is racing against the clock to review hundreds of thousands of pages of the Jeffrey files. Dr. F has made an appearance as well for the normalization of, well, let's just see, he's talking about democracy. So, overseas, you got tensions as always. A jet that was carrying a Libyan top military leadership has crashed, and everyone was killed on board. There are issues going on with the banning of Christians in Gaza from doing their Christmas pilgrimage again. And Turkey has closed its airspace after losing contact with the Libyan jet that had the defense minister on there. Black Sea has gotten another drone attack, and NATO countries are preparing for a much rougher future with the potential of conflict with, of course, Russia. Poland and Russia have shut down each other's consulates to tell you everything you need to do. Federal troop deployment in Chicago has been blocked by the Supreme Court, and there are sanctions on officials in Europe over their censorship. So, as you can say, it's another normal day here in the world, and we're going to cover it all here on the Crisis Report tonight. We appreciate you being here. God bless. Settle in. This is it. We're going to get going, and we're not going to waste time. Most comprehensive news on YouTube. Yes, I know it's late, but yeah, we're doing this one for the morning. So here we go. Share this out real quick, and bada bing, bada boom. Hit that like button. This is on Substack if you would like to follow along and get a transcript of all this. Trump is introduced as a host of the Kennedy Center Honors, primetime on CBS, and the Rocky soundtrack was playing as he rolled in a tux. Israel is banning Christians in Gaza from their annual Christmas pilgrimage, third consecutive year. Dr. F has warned that his normalization of untruths and conspiracy theories could lead to a collapse of democracy. Trump administration estimates that it has about 1 week remaining and roughly 700,000 pages still to review of the Jeffrey files. Turkish airspace has been closed after contact was lost with the jet carrying Libya's chief of general staff. Libyan government officials confirmed that the jet carrying the army chief of staff, ground forces chief, and head of military manufacturing, and the chief of staff's advisor had all crashed, and all on board were killed. The United States Supreme Court rejected Trump's deployment of National Guard troops to Chicago in a 6-3 ruling. Greta Thunberg has been arrested in London under the Terrorism Act for holding a sign that simply said, "I support the Palestine Action prisoners. I oppose G-side." And why are clothes from China cheap? Well, it's because there's massive Chinese textiles factories going up, and there's 0 human beings inside. In fact, one has 5,000 looms running 24/7, and it's all done with the intellectually artificial. U.S. has deployed special operations aircraft and troops to the Caribbean, expanding military options as Trump intensifies pressure on Venezuela's Maduro. The buildup includes CV-22 Ospreys, cargo planes carrying personnel and equipment alongside naval forces and advanced aircraft already in the region. According to initial information, the jet carrying the Libyan General Staff delegation suffered an electrical failure shortly after taking off from Esenboga Airport. The crew issued a mayday call and began turning back to the airport. As the aircraft was preparing for an emergency landing, it started dumping fuel. Authorities have not yet determined whether the explosion occurred in midair during the fuel dump or after the aircraft went down. Search efforts are currently focused on the area. Marco Rubio says that for far too long, ideologues in Europe have led organized efforts to coerce American platforms to punish American viewpoints they oppose. And Lord knows that when you oppose an American viewpoint, or you oppose anyone's viewpoint, using the platforms to punish people is about as wrong as it gets. And it also means that you're losing the argument and can't win. Right? Trump administration will no longer tolerate these egregious acts of extraterritorial censorship. Today, the Department of State will take steps to bar leading figures of the global censorship industrial complex from entering the United States. We stand ready and willing to expand the list if others do not reverse course. Wouldn't it be wonderful they did this not only in other countries, but maybe also here at home, or to do things to try to take it so large platforms that say, oh, I don't know, influence tens of millions of people, don't do it from a way that pushes only one side of the coin politically, by shadow banning and stuff like that, right? U.S. watchdog found that F-35 jets were ready to fly over 50% of the time in 2024, well below requirements due to maintenance failures by Lockheed Martin. Our fleet is not ready. CBS News pulled a 60-minute report on abuses at El Salvador's CICOT in the U.S. The segment was censored in the U.S., but it aired in Canada, so now there are clips popping up all over. CBS said it needed more reporting. Poland closed Russia's last consulate in Gdansk, leaving only the embassy in Warsaw. Warsaw cited alleged Russian sabotage. Moscow denies it, of course, and Russia retaliated by closing Poland's consulate in Irkutsk. Finland raised the reservist age limit to 65. Law adds about 125,000 reservists over time, growing the reserve to roughly 1 million by 2031. Wow. Okay. United States envoy to the UN, Mike Waltz, says that the United States does not recognize Nicolas Maduro or his cronies as the legitimate government of Venezuela. Nicolas Maduro is a fugitive from American justice. Maduro and his regime took the election, according to Mr. Waltz. President Trump has been very clear that he is going to use the full power of the United States to take on and eradicate the drug cartels, which have operated in our hemisphere for far too long. Mexico, I'm looking at you. Turkish-flagged cargo ship was reportedly hit by a kamikaze drone in the Black Sea yesterday morning while sailing from a Ukrainian port to Turkey. It's the fourth attack on a Turkish-linked ship in the recent weeks in the Black Sea. Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni says 2025 has been a tough year for all of us. But don't worry, folks. Next year will be much worse. Sounds like she's a prepper. The U.S. has deployed a large number of special operations aircraft and multiple cargo planes carrying troops and equipment to the Caribbean this week, expanding U.S. military options for potential action in the region, according to the Wall Street Journal. Tanker trackers on X, although to our best of the knowledge, the Bella 1 still has not been seized, and she's facing another challenge. What is that? Well, she has been in transit for 39 days and 11 knots average speed. She has maybe another 28 to 35 days of fuel available unless her speed drops. This might happen if the U.S. Coast Guard aborts the pursuit. Based on that, she will likely be heading southeast towards South Africa in order to reach the Middle East. This will allow her to remain offline from AIS. Suez Canal is an AIS mandatory zone, as is the Strait of Gibraltar. U.S. sanctions Europe for censoring Americans. EU theory Britain behind the Digital Services Act is sanctioned for threatening Elon Musk before his interview with President Trump. For the interview, Breton ominously reminded Musk of X's legal obligations and ongoing formal proceedings for alleged noncompliance with illegal legal content and disinformation requirements under the DSA, under Secretary of State Sarah Rogers wrote. Others on the sanction list are Imran Ahmed, Center for Countering Digital Hate, Claire Melford, Global Disinformation Index, Annalena von Hodenberg, Hate Aid, and Josephine Ballon, Hate Aid. I love the names. Digital Countering Digital Hate, Global Disinformation Index, and Hate Aid. No, it's called Weaponizing Speech so you guys can be frickin' communists. Spot gold prices surged above $4,500 an ounce for the first time in history. Gold is now $31.5 trillion asset, 7 times larger than NVIDIA. Land of confusion, great reset in motion. This is one just for some consideration. The global disruptions we have seen in recent years are frequently presented as a chaotic sequence of events, a ronademic, inflation, energy shortages, and war. Little wonder that most people are confused. However, a structural analysis reveals a more deliberate, controlled demolition of the 20th century social contract. We are witnessing transition from a productive capitalist model, which required a healthy mass labor force, to what Yanis Varoufakis calls a techno-feudalist order, and it's exactly what they want. Even the digital platforms you're visiting. I see you. Oh, we gonna fight too. Unidentified individual opened fire on people in Wilmington, Delaware, where former U.S. President Joe Biden's residence is located. Suspect was neutralized during a shootout with police. I believe it was on 95. State trooper was killed. Turns out the idiots that redacted many of the files did so by highlighting the text black, so you can unredact some of the files. People are doing that. I'll have more on that. After weeks of delay, paramilitary assaults on its buildings, and threats of a socialist revolution, the National Electoral Council of Honduras is set to declare Nasri Asfura, Palestinian businessman backed by Trump, as the winner of the presidential election in the coming hours. We look forward to Honduras becoming, financially viable again. And the current situation going on here on the economics. U.S. GDP growth is at its strongest pace since 2023. CPI inflation unexpectedly fell to 2.7% last month. Trump is appointing a new Fed chair who will cut rates. Oil prices are down to their lowest level since 2021, and equity ETFs have attracted a lot of people to come in and buy them. So, honestly, the numbers are looking good for Trump. And now, as for people that are just trying to get by and paying $5 for a loaf of bread, not so much. Odds of the Fed pausing rate cuts in January 2026 surged to a new high of 86%, according to Polymarket. Fed Chair Powell is set to halt rate cuts again, even as core inflation hits its lowest level since March 2021. S&P 500 officially has posted its highest close on record, closing at 6,910, now up 43% since the April 2025 bottom. Santa rally is alive and well. Shocking stat of the day, interest costs on U.S. public debt may reach as much as $2.2 trillion over the next decade. That would mark a 127% increase from $970 billion reported in fiscal year 2025. This comes as the government is projected to borrow $2 trillion annually. U.S. unemployment rate is likely heading higher. Heavy truck sales are down 5.1 million over the last 12 months, lowest since 2020, and that's an indicator. Outside the Ronademic, this is the lowest level in 8 years. Annual truck sales have declined by 1.1 million over the last 18 months. Tension in Syria. Kurdish forces of the SDF are preparing for an offensive against an army loyal to the government of Abu Muhammad al-Jalani. In the latest and highly controversial release of documents tied to convicted sex offender Mr. Jeffrey, a group of tech-savvy internet users have exposed a serious flaw in how heavily redacted portions of the files were handled by the U.S. Department of Justice. Now, also remember, this might be a ruse, and people have done this to kind of get it out there, and it's actually selected and done on purpose. Rather than remaining concealed, many of the blacked out sections could be revealed simply by copying and pasting the text from Adobe Acrobat into common word processing programs such as Google Docs or Microsoft Word. Once pasted, the supposedly hidden information became visible, effectively undoing the redactions intended to keep that content confidential. So, yeah, not good. Friends, are brought to you by Augusta Precious Metals. If you want to put your gold and silver IRA, put your IRA into a gold and silver package, this is the company to do it. There's links in the description. Other than that, friends, we appreciate you being here. We hope you're having a wonderful Christmas Eve. Go enjoy your family. Go do things. Don't let the doom get to you. But we appreciate you being here. Hit that like button, do the subscribe thing, darken out the bell. We're brought to you by Augusta Precious Metals, and we are on X and Minds and Substack and Gab and Twitter and Truth and all kinds of places. Subscribe, start on Locals for a couple bucks if you want to get the cool stuff. Other than that, folks, we appreciate you being here. Get the full transcript on Substack, and we will see you on the next one. Make sure you hit that like button and all that. That, my friends, is the best way to put a middle finger to a certain someone who rhymes with Yorg. God bless. We'll see you on the next one.